Mhm.
Amazing. So this presentation is going to take about like 20 minutes. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So if you're ready, good day, everyone. As you may know, I am Belén Bello Gatica, an Impact MBA candidate, and today I'm going to present my fellowship project as an assistant project manager in Circular Colorado. To start, let's move really fast through the agenda. So first, I'm going to introduce Circular Colorado and myself, followed by a little bit of context about like relevant topics related to my project. And after that, I'm going to talk about the project development process, my takeaways and recommendations. And finally, I'm going to summarize everything and also the impact and the future challenges. So here we go. As I mentioned, I am Belén Bello Gatica. I'm an Impact MBA candidate on corporate sustainability at Colorado State University. Besides that, I'm pursuing a diploma on carbon management, also by CSU. And also I'm on track to get my Sustainability Excellence Associate certification, which is given by the International Society of Sustainability Professionals, also known as ISSP. I also have a certificate on social entrepreneurship from Amherst College in Massachusetts. And I got my bachelor's degree in business administration with a major in marketing at Universidad de Concepción back in Chile. And besides that, my experience resides in project management, data analysis, universal digital accessibility, social entrepreneurship, B Corp certification, the greenhouse gas emissions protocol, ERP software integrations, and event productions. So Circular Colorado is a nonprofit organization that is based in the state of Colorado, and its goal is to create circular economies through radical collaboration between private companies and government. They provide operation-focused services for all the pieces of a circular economy, and they are pioneering innovative solutions to turn waste into resources. It's also important to mention that the Circular Colorado has the contract with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to run the Circular Economy Development Center, also known as CEDC. Now, the circular economy is an industrial system that by design is restorative or regenerative. And the main benefits of this model are the reduction of material use, the recapture of like traditional waste as a resource, and the redesign of products and materials to enhance efficiency, durability, and recyclability. And as mentioned before, a big piece of a circular economy is to transform waste into resources. And to do so, basically, we must recycle. And recycling is important not only because of the circular economy, but also because we reduce methane emissions by not sending more elements to landfills. And as mentioned, we're transforming regular trash in resources, and this causes the lowering the rate of extraction of non-renewable resources. And also recycling creates a space for innovation, and it basically accelerates local economies. So before I dive like deep into my project, I want to mention some relevant things regarding textile waste. So when I talk about textile, I am talking about apparel items like footwear, bottoms up, bottoms, tops, and other things. And I'm also talking about non-apparel items like carpets, mattresses, or like soft furniture. So textile waste is more than just what we wear. So why is textile waste relevant for sustainability? So first, textile waste is relevant for sustainability because textiles only have a diversion rate of 15%, which has been stable over time, meaning that there has been no improvement. There are no better ways to deal with textile waste. And when I say diversion rate, I mean that 15% is either getting recycled or moved to secondary markets for donations or sent abroad. The second reason why textile waste is relevant, so the growth on textile waste is bigger than plastics. Between the year 2000 and 2017, the tons of textile waste sent to landfills increased 78%. This is almost twice as the growth of plastics sent to landfills. And also textile waste per capita increased 54% for the same time period. And most of these results are driven by fast fashion, which is the business model that focuses on mass production, leveraging on scale economies to offer apparel at a low cost to the consumer, but a high cost to the environment. And following that, let's talk about the consequences of sending textiles to landfills instead of recycling them. So I highlighted 3 burdens that I believe are the most relevant. So first we have water usage. It takes 2,700 liters of water to create 1 cotton shirt, which is equivalent to the water intake of 1 adult human for 2.5 years. And it takes 7,600 liters, which is equivalent to almost 7 years of water intake for a human being to produce 1 pair of denim jeans. If we move to carbon emissions, 10% of the global carbon emissions are attributed to textile industries, which is equivalent to powering all England households for 1 full year, which is around 22 million homes. And the third, the textile industry's use and abuse of chemicals as part of their manufacturing process to dye clothing, to make them resistant to water, for instance. And this causes water contamination, landfill contamination, and overall leads to more environmental pollution. So now that we have like a context and we know the basics, let's talk about the projects that I was involved in and what I did in a specific. So I mainly worked in 2 projects. The first one was called Front Range Transload. The goal of this project is to collect recyclable materials that are at risk of going to landfills due to challenges faced by small-scale generators, like small accumulation of materials, lack of access to hauling, and also prohibitive transportation costs. And my challenge for this project was to A, map potential public collection spots in Colorado, B, approach to the workflow, and C, draft a system for data collection. And the second project was called Textile Circular Economy. And the goals of these projects were to determine the feasibility of a textile material recovery facility, a MRF in Colorado, and to develop a textile circular model for Colorado, sorry. And here my challenges were to A, apply the circular economy development model to approach a solution for textile waste in Colorado, and B, research textile MRFs and understand the relevance in a textile circular model, and if it could be applied here in Colorado. And these 2 projects might seem like they're not related, but if you recall a few slides ago, collection is a key element for a circular model. So the X Front Range Transload brings a middle ground solution for whatever circular model we want to create in the state of Colorado. So it's actually super relevant. And in order to work these projects, I followed the step-by-step circular economy development model, or CED for short. So for the X Front Range Transload project, my first challenge was to map potential public collection spots in Colorado. And to do this, I researched all towns, cities, and counties in Colorado. I selected the collection spots that fulfilled our requirements because they needed to be close to the main routes of the trucking company. And they must not be managed by private companies like Waste Management or Republic. And after that, I created maps that were used by the rest of the team in field visits. And I also created a database with all the spots I selected, including location, materials they received, and who administrates it, like a city or a county. So here's a picture of the map that I made for the project, and all the light blue spots are potential collection spots. And for the same project, my second challenge was to try to approach to a workflow. And to do so, I caught up with all the plans for this project because it started before I joined the team. I also attended meetings with stakeholders, and finally, I created a first version of the workflow, which allowed me to highlight gaps to the project manager in charge. And my last challenge for this project, I was tasked to create a system for data collection. And to do so, I again attended meetings with stakeholders. I discussed with the project manager what were the needs. And based on that, I created different iterations of a consumer-facing form to request material pickup. And this allowed me to also identify some issues that could affect the process. And here on the left, we can see the first draft of the workflow I created for this project. Some of the gaps I identified were the lack of procedure when materials are not approved, and also the need to verify the information provided by users. I mean, weighting the material once it gets to the facility. And on the right side of the screen is a test of the pickup request form. And by doing this, we discovered that uploading pictures, which is basically a key element of the evaluation of materials, was really complicated. And thanks to this, the project manager decided to evaluate new alternatives to ease the user experience for this. And now, moving to my main project, which is the textile circular economy model. My challenge was to apply the CED model to create a solution for textile waste in Colorado. Sorry. Following the model, first I had to focus my efforts on defining the basics and setting some frameworks where I could start from. And to do it, I participated in the Recycle Colorado Summit, which was actually my first 3 days of fellowship. I also researched about textile waste and existing solutions and policy. I connected with companies in Colorado that participate in the industry, and I also went to site visits to understand their process. And after that, I was able to determine the stakeholder companies that could be part of a circular model in Colorado. We stuck with Mycocycle, they're a fungi tech company, and Tertius Solutions, and they focus on re-commerce and recycling of apparel items. And I'm gonna talk about them a little bit in a few slides ahead. I was also able to draft the commitment forms for the stakeholders, and I also attended a meeting with both of them to evaluate the possibility of collaboration between these two to create a circular economy. And then, along with my project manager, we defined reporting and data management, including for the first time the consideration of the greenhouse gas emissions as a metric of impact. My project manager, she created the project in Asana software, and we also set the project timeline and established base responsibilities for all parts involved. And now we're scheduling additional site visits for further assessment. And my second challenge for the textile circular model was to research textile MRFs to determine feasibility. And here I took a deep dive in research about MRFs. I found CSAP, which is a company that's based in Sweden, and I connected with them to ask some questions. I also participated in meetings with RRS. They're a consulting firm that was working with the CEDC. And the main takeaways from this challenge were, first, a textile MRF could be possible, but it's super complicated because it's very expensive and it requires like a long period of time to implement. And it also requires readiness of the end markets. And Colorado is not there yet. So here are some pictures of my fellowship. From left to right, first is me at this EDC booth in the Recycle Colorado Summit. Fun fact, I had to build that booth. In the middle one, I'm in a site visit. There are tons of textile material ready to be sold to secondary markets around me. And on the right, there's a picture of Tertius Solutions when I went to visit them to understand better the process. And now comes the juicy part, some recommendations and findings. So these are the limitations to develop a textile circular model, considering the current state of the industry. I'm gonna talk about each of the elements of a circular model. So first, for sustainable design, there is a lack of it. And that's caused by the vast predominance of fast fashion. About production, mostly new materials are being used. Production is very energy and water intensive, and it's important to mention that there is limited access to domestic manufacturers, which leads to distribution. So here, and considering that most of the production happens overseas, most of the products travel thousands of miles to reach the final consumer. And this has a huge impact on carbon emissions. And when the product arrives, we must evaluate how the people consume textiles. And due to lack of sustainable design, most of the apparel items, they don't have a long durability, and they end up in landfills, and otherwise they end up being donated, and after a while they get sold to companies abroad most of the time. And the last two pieces are collection, sorting, and recycling. Due to the blend of fabrics and the chemical usage, sorting tends to be really complicated. The inexistence of textile MRFs and the lack of institutional ways for citizens and companies to recycle textiles make collection even a more difficult task. And of course, if there is no collection, there is nothing to recycle. causing the need for companies to extract new raw materials to create more products. And basically everything is connected. So what does this mean in the context of Colorado? It means that we have some challenges to overcome before trying to tackle textile waste. So the first one is the feedstock availability and quality. Due to the things I've mentioned before, there is no reliable supply of textiles to be recycled in Colorado. No systems have been implemented in Colorado, which causes an constant supply, and whatever is available to recycle tends to be a low quality product due to the fabric complexity. The second one is infrastructure. So even though creating a textile mill feels like the solution, it requires a high financial investment, which is expensive. So who has to pay for it? And also technology needs to move forward a little bit more, because today it is required to perform a pre-sorting of the material before using the technology available, meaning more jobs for the people of Colorado, yes, but also it increases the cost. The third one is the economic readiness. So markets are not ready to value and price accordingly recycled textiles. Overall, doing it today, it is expensive. And since we already established its low quality, it tends to minimize the profit margins. The fourth one is policy. So 2 years ago in Colorado, the Extended Producer Responsibility, the EPR House bill was passed. But this one is only focused on plastics, aluminum, glass, cardboard, and printed paper, meaning that there is no policy in Colorado that tackles textile waste. And fifth and final, end markets. So even if all the things mentioned before worked somehow, there are no end markets big enough to consume and use all the recycled fabric that we could possibly generate in Colorado. So considering all things mentioned before, these are the key parts of a successful textile circular economy in Colorado. All of these factors, they have to align to reach circularity in that industry. And I know it's pretty disappointing to try to make the world a better place and realizing that it's more complicated than it looks, but we need to deal with what we have now and then innovate to do better in the future. So considering all the challenges and all the limitations, this is how the CEDC is taking steps in the right direction to make a viable circular textile economy in Colorado. So this is the model we are currently working on a pilot with Mycocycle. They're a company that uses fungi to originally reduce and downcycle construction waste. But now, and thanks to innovation, obviously, we're testing the use of the same process for carpets. And this is how it goes. So the collection will happen thanks to the X Front Range Transload, which is the CEDC project that I mentioned earlier. And they will help us move carpets from all around Colorado. Once they're received, the process eats all the organic material present in the carpets and leaves a biopolymer, which is a valued material for different industries. The CEDC and Mycocycle will create a consumer-facing one-pagers that will be displayed in collection spots, detailing what can be received and what cannot. And regarding policy, the only one that kind of works for this is the House Bill 1261, which is named Climate Action Plan to Reduce Pollution. It doesn't mention textiles, but it gives guidelines to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the collaborative partnerships piece, of course, we will be working with the X Front Range Transload, but we're also working with transportation, recyclers, and manufacturers from and across Colorado. And also, we have a second model that is more specific for down, for feather products. So Terza Solution is a company that's based in Denver, and they already have a down recycling operation, but they approached the center with two challenges. So first, they didn't have enough feedstock, and second, they were generating waste scraps that were around 10% of whatever they processed. So in this case, we increased the collaboration part to close those gaps. So the collection part, again, was driven by the Front Range Transload. The down-containing garments are shredded by Terza Solutions, and the down is separated from the scraps. The down is then treated by Terza Solutions technology using CO2 to clean the feathers, meaning that there is no water or chemicals used in the process. and then the scraps are processed by mycocycle. So the fungi, it's the scraps and leaves a biopolymer. For the end markets, the down is sold back to garment manufacturer companies, and the scraps are, as I mentioned, transformed into a biopolymer that can be sold to multiple industries. So now for the collaboration piece, we can see that adding another stakeholder to the table can improve the impact in the industry. And why two models? If we compare, we can see that mycocycle alone is a feasible model and it's being worked on currently. But here we are not working fabric to fabric, meaning that the outcomes are not being reintroduced in the same industry. And for the model that has mycocycle and terses, we were able to walk another step and close the gaps, selling to the garment manufacturers a material that comes from garment. And at least 90% of the material processed will be reintroduced in the circular economy loop, and the other 10% will be used in a different industry. But the important thing is that they will not end up in landfill. So I know it was a lot, I'm sorry. Let's summarize the impact, and after that, I'm going to outline the future challenges and transition. So my work with the CEDC is summarized in these 6 squares. So for the textile project, the first one is that due to all the challenges and limitations to implement a textile circular model in Colorado, I participated in the decision to not pursue the creation of a textile MRF in the short term. I also participated in more than 20 meetings with different stakeholders to create a circular model. I applied a circular model for mycocycle and terses, which is a step forward towards a full circular model for textiles here in Colorado. And I facilitated the drafting of the commitment forms for the key stakeholders, mycocycle and terses, to evaluate the feasibility of a collaborative textile circular economy. And for the X Front Range Transload project, I developed the first versions of our workflow and the material pickup requirement form. And I also created 4 maps with more than 35 potential collection spots that will help increase the feedstock of recycled materials to different industries in Colorado. So what comes next? We need to implement the down circular model and the pilot mycocycle. I am still working with the CEDC, but considering that I need time to focus on school, the deputy director of the center, Cleo, has taken the lead to keep moving on without affecting the timeline of the project. Also, it is very important not to settle with what we have and keep testing new textile products, which can happen thanks to mycocycle and their fungi technology. Textile waste is a problem for everyone, and considering this, we need to standardize the models that we created and will continue to create to basically allow replication in other states or even in other countries. And finally, it is also important to implement new metrics in the impact assessment, considering that the main goal of the CEDC is to reduce pollution through collaboration. By applying the greenhouse gas emission protocols and life cycle assessments, we can ensure that we are making a positive impact in the environment. And that was my experience. I had a lot of fun. For several moments was really challenging, but I learned so much, and I proved to myself that I can cause a positive impact in my community. So thank you.
Very good. Well done.
Thank you.
That's a lot.
It was a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to stop recording now. So that way, because I think we're going to share this with CDPHE.